Hi there, this is Matt at State of Flux here with a review for Carrie, both book and films. That's right, this is a movie that has been, or a book that has been adapted into multiple movies. 3, in fact, that are direct adaptations. One in the late 70s by Brian De Palma, that is the most famous one, and the one that I'm going to talk to you about the most. Then we have the one from 2002, which I have not seen, but can review the trailer, and then the 2013 Abomination that starred Chloe Grace Moretz. And this is interesting because I'd seen Carrie, I'd seen multiple incarnations and rip-offs of Carrie, and I never really understood the genuine horror of it. It's the horror comes from like how cruel people can be, how awful bullying can be, and how it can manifest terrible things in its wake. And that was something that always intrigued me. And I thought the Brian De Palma version was a pretty good movie. And I saw the 2013 one, and I thought, at the time, I said that was the worst movie of the year. I don't know if that holds up. I rewatched it yesterday, and it was better than I remembered. Still not great. But there you have it. But then a couple years ago, I read the book, and this one right here. And Carrie the book is substantially better than any adaptation I have seen of it. Carrie the book reads just beautifully. And it was fascinating because the structure of the book is kind of unique. It is told sort of in past tense, or future tense almost, of people writing back about, you have the story as portrayed in the movie, but then you have textbook documents written from the then future about the Carrie White incident and what happened and how these powers manifested within her and how they could be manifesting in others out there. And that aspect was just absolutely stunning. This was a weird page turner where I just got it because I had read Salem's Lot like the week before, and I was blown away with how much I liked Salem's Lot, and I was like, you know what, I should actually read Carrie. I've never actually read it, and I like the De Palma flick. So I picked it up, started reading it right afterwards, and I couldn't put it down. I got 170 pages into it before I had to call it quits. It just was that much of a page turner. I hadn't experienced something like that since I'd read like the Harry Potter books when I was young. And that was just mind-blowing to me, and it was what inspired me to actually go through and read King's entire catalog. I'd read a handful of his books and liked several of what I had read. But this was the one that I was just like, holy shit, I need more of this man's work. And Carrie just holds a special place in my heart because I think it is just that good of a book. One of my favorite Stephen King books that I've read thus far, having read about 20-ish of his novels and short story collections. I genuinely think that if you have not read Carrie, go out and pick it up. Even if you've seen the movies, this book reads so well. And what the movies lose is that whole documentation of this weird, unique incident. That is absent in the movies, largely. We're going to touch on the 2002 one in a little bit. Yeah. Also, the casting of Carrie seems to have been off in the 2 major theatrical releases, the De Palma version and the bad 2010s version. Carrie is supposed to be kind of a frumpy girl, and though they cast unique-looking actresses in Sissy Spacek and Chloe Grace Moretz, neither of them are frumpy, and both are inarguably beautiful. And like they're Hollywood unique looking, but not necessarily like this character that's supposed to be so plain, she's like unseeable kind of thing. And that always kind of, like, having read the book and then seen the movie, that does rub me a little weird, because it just doesn't capture the character. Now, Sissy Spacek gave such a damn good performance that it's able to eclipse her casting. You'll have that sometimes. I just talked about Harry Potter. Hermione, Emma Watson, is just so perfect in that role. It alters the fact that she is way too beautiful to be that character as written from the book. So, like, it's Hollywood nonsense. That said, I love what Brian De Palma does with the movie. It's uniquely shot. It's very of its time, very 70s, and it feels not experimental, but like there's almost a comic book language to the way the story is edited and shown to us. The choice of camera and where to focus our eye is very unique in that film, and I quite like it. But even this time around, I didn't find it scary. I haven't found any of the film adaptations particularly scary. And it's kind of a unique thing, because if you think about it, Carrie really did change the way we see horror. Not necessarily in like a broad sense, but the Carrie figure from that book and really that first movie has had like lasting ripple effects that we see. We see Carries in plenty of projects post-Carrie. Now, they may not be named directly Carrie, but even like a Friday the 13th film pitted Jason against Carrie in the 7th one. She wasn't named Carrie, I think she was named Tammy or something like that. But you have the psychic woman who's suffered extreme oppression and belittlement that these powers manifest and arc out at others. You get that in The Dark Phoenix. You get that in Paranorman. You get that in, as I said, Friday the 13th, 7, The New Blood. You get that in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You get that in Degrassi the Next Generation, in their Time Stand Still 2-part episode of the school shooting. You get these stories that all go back to Carrie, be it the King version or the De Palma version. And that is kind of neat, in that this scary story, which isn't really scary, the horror comes from not scares, but from the horror experienced by the reader or watcher of knowing people like Carrie. There was always a Carrie at school. Now, in my school, there was not many girls that were heavily picked on like that, but it was oftentimes a young boy that was just ridiculed to nothingness. But we've seen, all of us, bullying, and this shows us the horror of what that does inside of a person and takes it to a supernatural level. And that's why this works as a horror story. Both in book and in film form. The problems with the 2013 one stem from a couple of things. I feel like that movie was shot to be PG-13 because they toned things down. They seem to tone down how the bullying is done. There's not the crassness of people's attacks on Carrie in that story. The menstruation bit in the beginning isn't as mean or uncomfortable as it was watching the De Palma version, which is really abrasive and in your face, and honestly probably more authentic to how actual kids would treat somebody who went through that experience so late in their life, in their teen life anyway. It just had like this softness that made it clearly a movie that was shot for PG-13 and then decided at the last minute to do some quick editing and digital effects work to make things ramped up into violent territory, to the point where, like, there's that car crash scene where the person's face just gets crushed in, and it's abrasively violent out of nowhere, and doesn't feel like it's an earned moment because the rest of the movie has been so soft, and it's just like, what happened? Why is this here? That was put in to secure the R rating after the fact. I'm convinced of it. It's almost the same thing as the Wes Craven basketball death in Deadly Friend, if you've ever seen that movie. That movie was shot to be PG, but then when audiences, the test audience discovered that Wes Craven was making a family-friendly retelling of Frankenstein, the studio went in and had him reshoot everything so that, or not everything, reshoot key bits to ramp up the horror, to make it scary, which it originally was not, and to make things violent. And there's one act of violence in that film where somebody gets killed with a basketball that is just so over the top that obviously it was put there so that they could secure an R rating to get to the audience that they were going for at the end of the day. That's what this felt like in the 2013 version. It just seemed toned down. Now, the one thing that movie did have is a really strong performance from Carrie's mother in the film, and she is pretty great. She's a great actress. Julianne Moore always kills it whenever she's on screen. She was the best aspect and almost made that film work, but it just doesn't. The De Palma one I've sung the praises for. It also is the film most responsible for the jump scare, which obviously had been done prior to that movie. Hell, even Psycho has a pretty good jump scare. But the coda jump scare that happens at the very end, that Scream even riffs on, the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare, comes directly from this movie here. That is Carrie. And that has also had its lasting effects through the ripple in time of history and horror. Now, I've been talking about those other two adaptations because I've seen them. The one I haven't seen is the 2002 made-for-TV version of Carrie. And weirdly enough, that seems to be, from what I can tell, the closest to an adaptation. It sounds like there's a framework of people investigating the Carrie White thing, talking to people, past tense, as police, about what happened that night at the prom. And so you have that aspect going for it, but then you also have my favorite aspect of the book, which was absent in both movies largely, is the aftermath of Carrie doesn't only destroy the school. Sure, she destroys the shit out of the school, and it's much more fantastic in the book. Obviously, they had certain limitations from the 70s De Palma version that they couldn't land what all she does in that school, or the walk home. But the 2013 version easily could have showcased that in grander scale. She destroys the city as she is walking home. The buildings around her, the gas lines, the gas stations, they all go up just because her rage is emanating out of her. And that is completely missing. However, in that 2002 version, that, again, I've only watched the trailer, and you might see me review this movie sometime in the near soon, showcases, at least in the trailer, a city that is going combust as she is walking home. And that was, as I say, my favorite aspect of the book. There's like a 40-page section of just her walking home and all the things that happen, and they give you timestamps of exactly what happens and when. And it's great. And this is my pitch. Inevitably, we will get another Carrie. It's just a matter of time. It's been 10 years. I'm surprised there hasn't been an attempt yet, because we've had a Carrie almost every 10-year cycle. In the 90s, we had Carrie, or The Rage Carrie 2, which I also haven't seen. I always liked the trailer for it, but I heard it was terrible, so I never watched it. Maybe I'll watch that too. I think that one's streaming on HBO Max, which the De Palma version is as well. The other two I talked about, the 2002 and 2013, are both on the Roku, free streaming with ads. That said, if you were to do this now, I think you could make a really interesting Carrie movie done in the way that, like, Dateline 2020 does their true crime docs. And you could have the reenactment, and that's where you get, like, the Carrie White story bits, but then also the true crime bits of narrating her reign of terror, intentional or otherwise, on the way home. And I also think this is a story that speaks well to all generations, but by using the true crime doc format, you could give us not only a unique version of this story, you can capitalize on what happens with, speak to those who have experienced true tragedy within their own school environment, or comment on in a supernatural light, the school violence that has plagued the United States and other parts of the world, but the mass crime or mass murder of, in a single moment, your school shooting, your bombings and stuff like that, in a unique light that sort of shines a light on how we get to some of these moments. Certainly not all of them are like that, but you could do something really interesting and compelling with that. And that's what I would like to see. If I were given the money to make a Carrie, that's how I would go about doing it. I would do it as a true crime doc, Dateline 2020 this story, and also give us those excerpts from the professionals who broke down in interview form within the book about how Carries happen. And that was really fascinating to me whenever I got to those passages in the book. Never been adapted in the films, as far as I can tell. Maybe that 2002 one is different. But anyway, what is your favorite incarnation of Carrie? Is the 2002 one worth watching? Is it a close adaptation? It looks really kind of close. It makes me want to watch it, and I might, as I say, have a review for you by the end of the month up for that. And have you read the book? If you've not read the book, again, final urging, read this book. It is a 4-star book, one of my all-time favorite books, and one of my top 5 Stephen King reads. Also, it's super fast read. It's barely 300 pages. As for the films, I give Brian De Palma's Carrie 3.5 stars. It's a good adaptation. I give the 2013 adaptation 2 stars. Originally I gave it only 1 star, but it's earned an extra star. There's stuff I do like about it. It's a little too glossy for my taste, as is the De Palma one on some respects, but it worked with that one a little bit more. I don't know. But anyway, what do you think of the Carrie stories, and what is your favorite Carrie adaptation that's not Carrie? I'm particularly a fan of the Tammy character, I think it's Tammy, in Friday the 13th 7, which you'll get a review from me next year, I think December. So stay tuned for that in a year and some change. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.